Welcome, Minister Bowen. Nice to have you in here in this circle with us. Welcome to the forum. We've heard a whole range of interesting points coming out from the diverse stakeholders involved in this arena, and I look forward to hearing from you. So let me introduce the Minister for Climate Change, Honourable Chris Bowen, and he's somewhere.
Well, thank you very much. And of course, this year Australians will have an extraordinary opportunity, to embrace an offer from the heart, an offer provided with patience and respect, and a step forward as a nation in our ongoing journey towards reconciliation. This year, Australians will have an opportunity to enshrine an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice to Parliament in the Constitution, a voice for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, to provide advice to government on policies that affect them. And this is, of course, the first step in a process of truth-telling and treaty making. Now, we approach the Uluru Statement from the heart with hope and humility. With humility because the time for constitutional change is long overdue, but with hope because I believe, and we believe, that Australians are ready to make the change. I grew up here in Western Sydney, the land from which I join you today. Always was, always will be, the land of the Gabbargal people, and I pay my respects to them, their elders past, present and emerging, and I pay my respects to their courage and determination to help build Australia, which is better and fairer. And I also join in with you in paying respects to the elders of all First Peoples across our country, including the First Peoples on the lands from which you gather today. Well, this is an important time for carbon farming and carbon markets, and a well-functioning and regulated carbon market helps us drive investment in projects that support emissions reduction. And using carbon markets to foster and utilise thousands of years of Indigenous knowledge of our land is particularly important to me personally. So that's why we are implementing an ambitious suite of policy reforms. 2030 is now 18 months away. 18 months to reach a target of 43% emissions reduction. And so we don't have a second to waste. In March, Parliament passed our Safeguard Mechanism Bill, putting Australia's largest emitters on a pathway to net zero by 2050. The strengthened safeguards will create demand for ACCU projects right across Australia, leading to increased opportunities for farmers and land managers and for First Nations peoples. ACCUs will continue to help industry meet their emissions reduction obligations and will contribute to Australia's 2030 and net zero targets. But we need to ensure the system underpinning ACCUs is effective. So that's why I commissioned an independent review led by Professor Ian Chubb to ensure confidence in its integrity and effectiveness. This review panel consulted widely. They consulted industry and regional communities and First Nations people and native title representative groups. The review concluded that the ACCU scheme arrangements were fundamentally sound. However, it did recommend some sensible changes to strengthen the scheme, including changes to some of the governance arrangements. Now, through the review process, ICIN supported native title representative bodies and land councils so that they could provide carbon advice to native title holders, approach to provide consent. ICIN also requested the government to remove the ability to conditionally register projects on native title lands prior to obtaining consent. The Chubb review heard you and recommended this course of action, and of course we've accepted this course of action in relation to native title consent. Recommendation 11 directly addresses these suggestions and is a priority for our next tranche of implementation of the Chubb review recommendations. One of the things the panel examined was the broader impact of carbon projects on agriculture, biodiversity and participation of First Nations peoples and regional communities. The panel recommended more support for regional communities and First Nations peoples to participate in and benefit from the scheme. And this is something we've made good progress on, an early start. We've invested over $20 million in the new carbon farming outreach program. The program will support Australian farmers and land managers, including First Nations peoples, to participate in carbon markets. It'll also help them integrate low emissions technologies and practices into their operations. Grants under the program, I'm pleased to tell you, will be open for application soon. These grants will be trusted and independent advisors to provide training and support across Australia. Now, following the Chubb review, we've put in place new governance and transparency arrangements that will facilitate the scheme's broader reforms. My department is now starting a new round of consultation that will enable a second tranche of administrative and legislative changes this year. They'll be seeking views on issues such as reforms to developing a pathway for First Nations participation, including negotiating native title consent, creating the new Carbon Abatement Integrity Committee, establishing a new proponent-led method for development processes. So I encourage you to make your voices known about these reforms. Now, I know that Savannah Fire Management Method is a particular strength of your members, and it's something I'm very supportive of. It helps generate millions of dollars worth of ACCUs across Australia each year. I want to thank you for your efforts to improve that method. The development of this method is a high priority for me personally and for the government. It'll provide an opportunity to include new carbon pools, such as living biomass, and more sophisticated modelling of other pools of biomass. That's likely to result in increased abatement opportunities for projects. And the development will also provide more First Nations communities an ability to use the method by expanding its applicability to areas with pinned vegetation. So the draft method is well advanced. My department will continue to work closely with you and with other stakeholders to ensure it meets the needs of participants. This includes an ability to account for more representative fire management regimes prior to ACCU scheme participation, as well as fairer ways for gamba grass to be managed in projects. We know that the new Savannah abatement tool is an important part of making the method more accessible for projects to calculate the benefit of transitions to it. The integrated farm and land management method is also very important, as you know. We'll continue to develop both methods to develop new opportunities, including opportunities to recognise the full abatement benefits of projects like tree planting, native forest regeneration, and activities to increase soil carbon. We'll continue to work with you to make sure these opportunities are realised. So in conclusion, climate change is, of course, as you know, everyone's business. It requires collective action of all Australians. It's an all of society effort. First Nations people are natural partners in efforts to realise Australia's emissions reductions ambition, to realise a once-in-a-century transformation in our economy, picking up on thousands of years of learnings. By working together, we can succeed, I know, in tackling this challenge and seize the enormous opportunities that come from climate action, not least the benefits that the carbon market industry has to offer. So I value your leadership on First Nations participation in industry, and I really look forward to working much more closely with you in the future on these important tasks. Thanks for having me on today.